Hey, Bennett.
We are excited to bring to you tonight a BDSM panel. My good friend Marilyn, she's been coming to my class, guest speaking my human sexuality class for over 4 years at this point.
Long time, yeah.
And bring to you tonight. And we became fast friends. BDSM panel. Hold on, real quick. My good friend. And I'm thankful she gave a kind of an intro. That was about a month ago, and we said that we were going to, do it bigger and better. And she's going to invite her friends to kind of give a talk. So, without further ado, I'm gonna clap y'all in. Thank you so much, Marilyn and friends, for coming tonight. This is being recorded, so we're happy that everybody was able to make it, and we look forward to the information that you all are going to be bringing tonight. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Thank you so much for having us back. We've been talking about doing this for a while. And thank you to everybody who's here. And I hope you had a chance to see the other class that I did, which was the intro. I've told all of these panelists what we talked about. So they're assuming you have some background knowledge based on what we talked about before. And we're going to go from there. So my job is not going to be to talk as much as I did last time, thank goodness for y'all, but to let these wonderful friends that I've asked to talk. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to call on people on the panelists, and they're each going to give you a little introduction about themselves so you know who they are. So let's see, I'm just going to go in the order that people joined. So Manny, you get to go first, lucky you. So please tell the folks about yourself.
Hello, I'm Manny Ojeda. My pronouns are he, him. I'm currently in San Francisco, California. Beyond BDSM and kink, I'm a digital marketer. I work for a public agency, and I really love it, working with underserved communities. I'm also a really big math geek, and I read just about everything. And I am also Latino, and I read a lot of literature in Spanish. In terms of how I got into the scene, I'd say really just in the last decade or so, and just in past relationships and with experimentation in really in play, in paddling, and that would lead to other things. So again, in ascension, but just through past relationships and more experimentation, and realizing that what I translated into pain or thought of into pain I could actually derive some pleasure from it. In the BDSM world, I am more of a bottom. And within the scene, I really like a few things. Among them, I really love flogging. I've gotten more into single tailing. Also, in terms of kink, I'm really big into exhibitionism, public play, and a few other things. And really, it's all been an ascension. What else? And I'm just excited to be here and to talk to people. On top of that, within the leather community, for what it's worth, I'm also the current Mr. SF Eagle, and I represent the SF Eagle Bar in the community through fundraising, community liaisoning, and that's something that I really enjoy, given the nexus between BDSM, kink, and also the leather and gear community. So that's a little bit about me.
So folks who are listening, if you have questions, now's the time to write them down, and we'll get to those at the end of the introduction. So if any of the panelists say something that you didn't understand or whatever, that's a good thing to write down. So let's go on. The next person would be Rio.
Hi, my name is Rio. My pronouns are she, her, and I've had lived in Oakland for about 25 years and just recently moved to South San Francisco, which is very different. I've pretty much spent my life in the book industry. I've worked in book selling and book publishing and book wholesaling. Right now, I'm laid off because of the pandemic and am kind of trying to figure out what I'm going to do as my unemployment has just run out. So we'll see what transpires from that. Outside of my fascination with books, I like to paint. I specifically do landscapes. I'm very interested in genealogy, finding out about my family's history. And And I'm a very, very amateur bird watcher. I just set up a couple of bird feeders in the backyard and I kind of see who comes by. How I got into the scene? I knew some people who kind of dabbled in this. And for me, I'm just always with somebody very much in my head. And that really can get in the way in a sexual experience. You start worrying about how you're doing, how you're feeling, how's the other person. And it took me right out of, an emotional connection with the other person. And what I found with BDSM is I'm much more connected to my body and what my feelings are. Let's see. When I came into the scene, I identified as a top, but forgive me, tops in the audience, but I found that kind of too easy. It wasn't very challenging. What challenged me was bottoming to people, and that's still where I find the most excitement. I identify, so over the years, I switched from, top to bottom to submissive, and I now identify as a slave. So anybody who has questions on slave identity, I'd be glad to answer them. So I think that about covers it.
Unmute. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Rio. Next would be, I don't remember, Bennett or Angel came on, but I'll say Bennett. You're on, Bennett.
Great, thank you. So I'm Bennett, or Tajana, that's my given name, but Bennett for the same. Let's see, I live in Oakland, and I shuffle paper at a biotech. So I've worked at the same biotech company for about 23 years. I'm in regulatory affairs, very exciting. I'm also on a board of directors for the 5 Key Schools and Programs, which is it's a charter school that helps inmates get their high school diploma. It started in San Francisco and it's spread throughout the Bay Area and down to LA. And I've been on that board of directors for about, I guess it's been 16 years now. So that's part of my vanilla life. So I'm 56 years old. No, in 3 weeks, I'll be 56. I've been clean and sober for 23, and I've been into kink for about, 21 or 22 of those years. My first scene involved having to recite the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And whenever I messed up and missed a word, my girlfriend flogged me and I loved it. It was really fun. I identify as a switch and also a boy, but I lean toward being more of a top, like a boy top or a top boy. And I've also topped, bottomed. I've switched roles mid-scene. I love doing that kind of stuff. So much fun. It just confuses people who are trying to watch. Some of my favorite things to do, I really enjoy flogging. I enjoy clothespins, applying them and receiving them. I love to wrestle, I like to punch. And I enjoy pierce play, hook pulls, giant hooks through the chest or the back or whatever. And I enjoy power play with my girl. And finally, I would like to say that for me, SM and kink, it's a spiritual path that really creates a direct connection to God for me, and it complements my recovery program. I believe that our higher powers, they love it when we're having fun, and it's especially important for Black women to find Black joy whenever and wherever we can. I recently hosted a workshop that focuses on introducing Black women to kink, and I hope to expand that into like a little mini series. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Bennett. Angel.
Oh, I'm ready to go. Hi, I'm Angel. I go by Angel Marie, and just Angel. My pronouns are she, her. I am the proud mother of 2 Osage children, and I live in Oklahoma City. I have been a part of the kink community, oh my goodness, since 2005. I didn't give away my age a little bit, like that's just sad. In my vanilla life, I am a special education teacher. So I teach at the local high school, so we're everywhere. I enjoy theater. I enjoy reading. I enjoy my daughters. Um, I don't know. I listen to music. I used to go to concerts. I used to go to conventions. COVID has changed my life in ways that I'm not super happy with, I guess. How I got into the scene. Oh, so this is where I show my geek, huh? So I got into the scene. I was role playing online, and got kidnapped from the world that I was in and dropped into another one. And so it was based on a series of books. So I read the books and then I started fantasizing. The books are the Korean series, which I don't recommend, but it is a lot of porn for those of us that are, it definitely was for me as I was awakening into what could possibly be. And it consumed my fantasies. So I had to pursue it. And then it eventually led me here. I currently identify as a switch as well. I am a ma'am to a colored girl. I have a daddy, top person in my life, has been for quite some time. So I'm very poly. Um, I have identified in the past as a slave. This is no longer for me. Um, but it was what I did first. So I guess I found the deep end and then found where I liked to tread afterwards. Oh, my favorite things to do. Um, Goodness is the top. I really enjoy body play. I really enjoy floggers. I mostly enjoy the look in someone's eyes when pleasure and pain combine to make this magical effect in someone. And to me, that is the best. So, like, all kinds of ways to get there. Uh, um, as a top, I also really enjoy non-traditional orgasms. And I also, as a bottom, really enjoy needles and whips and heavy body play and power dynamics and bats. Um, let's see, I'm a boot black as well. And so that has its own whole thing I'd be happy to talk about if somebody's interested. But that is my favorite thing by far all the way around. Um, that's really it unless somebody has some questions.
Okay, we'll get to questions soon. That's great. Thank you so much, Angel. Tyler, last but not least.
Yep. Hello, everybody. I'm Tyler Fong. And let's see. I use he, him pronouns. And just for a point of fact, I am actually transgender. So I am female to male. And for me, BDSM helped me come out and realize who I was as a person, as a male in the gay men's community, and that I was kinky. So it all kind of tied in together. And I live out here in the East Bay. I'm in Concord. I've been here for over 20 years, and I've also been working as an x-ray tech. So I'm in a hospital, and that's been over 20 years worth of work over there. That's where I just came from now. So I've been busy with that. And before COVID, I was involved with several community music groups. So I had a chamber orchestra out here in the East Bay. I'm also a member of the San Francisco Lesbian Gay Freedom Band. And we've managed to hook up via Zoom to run rehearsals and produce some pieces that we've posted on YouTube. So coming up next will be the Dance Along Nutcracker. I got into BDSM, I'd say through books. I was reading a lot. So in the late 90s, I read SM 101 and anything I could find on what was then very minuscule amounts on the internet. So I hunted through libraries to find SM types of books. But after a few years, I kind of figured that I needed some practical hands-on experience. So I ended up finding a group, which it was a weekend getaway called Leather Levi Weekend. And so that's where I found out about folks not only in San Francisco, but in the East Bay who were involved with BDSM and had kinky interests like I had been exploring and had read about in the books. So there, I met many people, important individuals from the 15 Association actually connected me to the gay men's community. And that's where I've had my experiences just playing with different men, of learning what things I liked or maybe didn't like and had an interest in. So I do identify as a leather boy, which is service oriented. And I find myself not really in service to an individual, but more in service to my community as a whole. So if they're doing a fundraiser or putting on a contest or presenting workshops over a weekend, I would be the volunteer that would go and help out with various tasks and take on various duties to serve my community as a whole. In play itself, I identify as a bottom, though sometimes I maybe have co-top, like say if we're mummifying someone and we're wrapping saran wrap around someone, it's nice to have 2 pairs of hands to do that. Or if we've got a gazillion clothespins to put on, extra hands help with the clipping up a little bit faster. I think I've kind of wanted to maybe explore a little bit of topping now that I'm getting older, per se. You know, I'm 54, and sometimes the body just kind of slows down and you want to try things that are maybe less intense. So learning from others that way, and the guys in the 15 are really good for mentoring and teaching and learning, exploring different and new things. So like I said, my hobby is playing French horn. It's been kind of put on hold for now. So that's where I'm at, and would take any questions you might come up with.
Thank you, Tyler. So I want to see if there's any questions that anyone live in the class has at this point.
Yeah.
I have some other questions I'm going to ask the panelists, but I definitely want to have you all ask questions. So if anybody has a question, you can just do that. No questions? If there's no questions, then I'll just go to our pre-prepared ones, but I'd much rather have you all ask questions.
Hi, so when someone identifies as a switch, what exactly does that mean?
Oh, so do one of the switches want to answer that, please?
Here we go. Sorry, something happened. Absolutely. So a switch means that I will give and or receive pain depending on how I feel in the dynamic with that person. It means that I can go either way. And typically for me, I choose to give or receive based off of the energy between me and the other human.
So
Yeah.
we previously defined top and bottom. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bennett, you go.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that and say that, like, for instance, one of my lovers, when we were starting to date, we actually had to figure out, who wanted to. Where the energy was, and I was thinking I said her, and we decided that, like, yeah, that was a dynamic that fit the best. Yeah.
So it's people who enjoy sort of both sides, depending. Okay, we had Angel. Angel's been having some connection. And she's back now. Okay. Angel's back. Yay, Angel. We'll get you back there. Okay, so hopefully I answered your question, Tiffany. Other questions from the class?
Somebody asked about mummification.
That question.
Oh, what is mummifying? Yeah, why don't you answer that, Tyler? Because you brought that up.
Yeah, mummifying is wrapping up the body. So, you would think, like, say, if you break a bone, you would wrap up the wrist. Mummification would be wrapping up the whole body. So typically you would find that would be saran wrap first as the first layer, and then oodles of duct tape on top of that. So it takes a little while.
Why do you do that?
From the bottom's perspective, because I haven't really done the top, it's the the confinement, it makes me actually feel very Zen-like and secure. I kind of float and end up feeling free of all the external outside things that are going on. So all my head talks, so I can be clear-headed and just kind of float and relax. And that's fun for me. I have seen other tops who will maybe remove, say, a little piece of the wrapping and say like play with the nipple. So then adding some sensation to the person who's mummified.
Rio, go ahead.
If I may add, I also enjoy mummification, and I very much echo what Tyler said. It's also, I compare it to like an infant being wrapped in swaddling clothes. There's something about being held by the wrapper, which has usually been saran wrap, that's very comforting. And it involves a lot of trust in the people that you're playing with. And I like that, the emotional connection of the trust that's involved in letting yourself be wrapped, all but head to toe by somebody else.
Any of the panelists done that as a top? No. Well, I'll speak. Oh, you have, Angel. Go for it. Do you want to talk about what's in it for you? You're muted. You're muted.
Yes, absolutely. I can speak to it, but if you would like to, that's fine. I personally like that it isolates, it takes away a lot of the physical touch sensation, because you kind of take that away from them, their ability to move, and then it's just kind of warm. But then you can introduce one lasting element, right? So you can put a blindfold, you can earplugs, and then whatever you do is that much more intensified because their other sensations are blocked out. So it's about that level of power and control, and it being given that, it's very titillating for me.
And the trust, like Rio said, being trusted that much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, good. Other questions from the class?
I have a question about.
You can put them in the chat or speak up. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have a question about mummification, since I haven't done it. If you don't have saran wrap or duct tape, can you wrap somebody in blankets or sheets or something? Just whatever you have on hand. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you could definitely use sheets. I think sheets would be better than a blanket. You want something thin so you can kind of pull it a little tighter and get a little more tension involved with it.
Okay. Other questions? So I'm going to point out that Bennett just said, oh, I've never done that. So that's just an interesting data point, that Bennett's been doing this for a long time, and there's so many different things, and here's something that she's never done. And I'm sure all of us have things that we've never done, even if those of us have been in the scene for a while. So it's pretty cool. I just want to point that out.
Yep.
Other questions from the class? You can speak up or you can put them in the chat, either way. Well, let me go ahead and I'm going to ask a question, and then we'll see if anyone else has questions. So do you have to be poly, in other words, have multiple partners in order to do BDSM? Does anyone want to talk to that? Has anyone ever been monogamous?
Absolutely not. I think a lot of people are what we would call poly in a play sense. So I've played with multiple people, but not necessarily having a romantic relationship with most or any of those people. So I do identify as polyamorous, although I am right now in a monogamous relationship, which I'm very happy in. But that doesn't mean that is the only person I play with.
Bennett, you're nodding. Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh no, it's just agreeing, and getting caught up on the latest dynamics in the relationship.
I've known Bennett for a long time, so she's learning about what's going on there. So yeah, I just want to point out that there's different definitions of poly. Also, I know some couples who only have like genital sex with each other, but play with other people, and they're are they poly? Are they monogamous? And yeah. So that's an interesting. How do you define poly? So
Can I also interject that BDSM does not have to involve sex? That when you're negotiating with someone or having a scene with someone, whether or not it becomes overtly sexual is a matter of negotiation between the two people, which also leads to the question of what is sexual. I mean, I find a lot of BDSM stuff exciting and often in a sexual way, but that does not mean it turns into close-off intercourse, something like that. The BDSM itself can be the scene without there being a traditional sexual aspect to it.
Well,
So-
and Rio's. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to speak to this concept of sex and play and the difference in the two, but really speak to like what do we define as sex? Because if you don't have an orgasm, is it sex? If you do have an orgasm, does that make it sex? It's kind of like what defines it would help us with that sort of a thing. As an open poly person, like it's pretty much about safety for me on that end, whether it's emotional or physical safety. But I would say that I could easily have most of my clothes on and be a bottom and be whipped with a single tail and absolutely orgasm and have full on body shakes and everything just because that kind of pain brings me that kind of pleasure. Am I having sex with that person? In that moment where we're not even touching, there's just a 6-foot whip between us. So it's something to consider.
So is that what you meant by non-traditional orgasms that you said
In
before?
part, yes, in part. Sometimes a really good meal can do it. Orgasm training is kind of a fun thing for me to do with my
Okay.
bodies.
Yeah,
Okay.
I generally don't mix. Well, I can do sex and play, but not at the same time. I mean, I'm finally learning how to because my girl really enjoys that. But for me personally, either we're playing or we're having sex. And sometimes I might feel at the beginning that I want to have sex with the person I'm playing with. And then by the end, I don't want to do it. And that's totally okay. Consent, I don't have to do it if I don't feel like it. Now let me muddy the waters, though. I want to muddy the waters.
Oh no.
Yeah, totally gonna muddy the waters here for sex and play. So one time, I was bottoming to somebody, and after being flogged and hit and everything, they asked me to fist them. So then I'm fisting them, and it's part of the scene. And when I got home and I was telling my partner at the time about, oh my God, yes, we did blah blah, and I fisted her. My partner's like, you had sex? And I was like, no, I was fisting her in service. It totally did not register to me as like we were being sexual. It was just part of the service. Like that is what the top wanted in that particular situation, and that's what we did. And then I tried to take a poll from people like, do you consider fisting in service to be sex? And some people said yes, and some people said no, and maybe someone has an opinion about that. People.
Anyone have an opinion about that? Tyler, you have an opinion about that?
Well, maybe not specifically that, but
Okay.
for me as a bottom, I do a lot of impact play. So that means it's inducing a certain level of pain. And then pain physiologically in the body releases endorphins. So I'm going for the endorphin high. And so I feel that our play is sexual, but it's not actual penetrative sex. My top, on the other hand, is probably getting very aroused and getting erect and hard. He may or may not come, but that's the extent of the sex in the scene that we've engaged in. And so I play with several men. We don't have romantic relationships outside of the dungeon. I just play with a lot of different partners. I did at one point for a few years have a boyfriend that was a monogamous relationship. But outside of that, I've been pretty much just free range. And I make play dates as they happen when I go to dungeon spaces.
Okay. We have a question in the chat from Tremi. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Is BDSM as normally expensive as it is portrayed in 50 Shades of Grey? So who would like to, Manny, you haven't said anything. Would you like to answer that, or would you, or pass? It's fine.
I have a few toys. I don't think it has to be. I think it can be very makeshift. I mean, I do have some toys that I've paid a little more for, but I mean, it can be as easy as, like, for example, nipple clamps can be clothespins. I mean, whatever. It can be, it's all about creativity. So, one can spend as much as one wants, or one can be more creative and thriftful. So for me, it doesn't have to be. It's depending on the toy that I want, or what I have around the house sometimes, honestly.
Oh, things, yeah. We call those pervertibles, right? Things that you have around the house that you use for other things, but you could use them in play. Yeah. Yeah. What is this? Is this what do you use? Is this your toy bag, Bennett?
Funny you should ask that. For the workshop on introducing Black women to kink, I gave some suggestions beforehand for things that they could use to play, and that we were going to set up an altar. So, for instance, there's like, you could get a switch off a tree. You could get a little switch off a tree. You could get a belt.
Oh, belts are great.
Belts are good. Oh, baby, check out the. Oh, I'm not going to take out everything in here because it's quite a bit. Toilet paper roll, just to irritate somebody. Newspaper, you crinkle it up, and then you like rub it all over them, and sometimes the edges are irritating. And finally, what else do I want to show? I mean, I just had a whole there's some clothespins, and then like I even have a tight shirt, like for a little compression. So just one of those really tiny little shirts. So
Give me my.
I have more stuff, but that's.
So basically you've got a whole bunch of impact and sensation toys and things like that you get at the dollar store.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If I may add to it, actually, I grew up in a Latinx household. My parents were born in Mexico, and so for us, a belt was really something used to discipline. And so that's something that I easily go to. So whereas if I did something bad, which wasn't often, but if I did, my father went straight to the belt. And that was just the assumption, that was discipline. So I didn't like it when I was young, but I learned to reappropriate that into pleasure. And so now that was one of the first things that I actually went to when I got into play was, well, I have belts. I mean, and they're hanging from my rod. So it's easy. It was both psychological and also very practical. So, and culturally referenced. So.
That's great. Anyone else have any favorite thing that isn't expensive that you use? Tyler, do you have something? And
Yeah.
You're next.
Yeah, totally. You got to think, outside the box. I mean, sure, there's expensive things that you can purchase, but you've got your own hand to be able to do things, right? You can poke, you can slap, you can hit. The roughness of the beard can go across skin surfaces. Yep, you can use nails, right? My lips or my tongue or teeth can bite. Everybody's got that already, and there's no expense put out at all. An elbow into a point of the body. You can use your own person as play and really engage on different sensations of the body.
Rio, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just, I'll say the weirdest thing I ever saw as a pervertible was a plastic bouquet of flowers that someone was using to flog someone with. So you really can use anything. But I also wanted to throw in that 50 Shades of Grey is one of the most inaccurate views of BDSM that I can think of. And I would take almost none of that as a true representation of what our community is like.
Yeah, I'd much more recommend books like The Topping Book, The Bottoming Book. There's a book called BDSM 101. There's Forget the Roses, Give Her the Thorns. That's a good one.
Screw the roses.
Which other ones?
Sorry, it's Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns.
Screw the Roses, Send Me the
It was
Thorns.
one of
Thank you.
my first books, so I absolutely remember that. But you don't need anything. You don't even need pain to have a scene.
No.
I know that I have done some brilliant stuff, just like we were sitting in a bar and I was like, put your hands right here, and if you move them, it's over. And then we
And that's
proceeded
bondage.
to have a whole scene just like that. It cost nothing.
So it's a lot of it's about power, not necessarily pain, right? Or sensation or connection.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Oh
All
yeah,
right.
my early scenes were sensations. So the back of a hairbrush, a feather, right, or a feather duster, a sponge. Those are sensations against the skin, and that was, early just sensation play. Yeah, not pain at all.
Yeah. Bennett says in the chat, I used to beat my friend with a sequined purse. That's pretty funny. Okay. Another question. Can you, let's see, how do you, now Rio, you mentioned the term slave. How do you reconcile the terms master and slave given the history of slavery in our country?
I don't, in some ways, reconcile the terms with the history in the US. I think anyone who is, all of the people that I've known in the master slave community, this is something that we talk about. And for some people, they find the terms offensive and they use something else. They'll use sir and boy or ma'am and girl, or my liege versus my vassal or something. There are all kinds of terms you can use. And for other people, they feel that the terms master and slave most closely approximate the power dynamic in their relationship. And I think have felt that if there was another term that was applicable, that we would be more than willing to change. But that particular phrase has a lot of power in it. And a lot of people continue to find it something that they're comfortable with using as a personal choice or identity.
Okay, Bennett, did you have something to say? You look like you were going to speak, or did I miss?
No, I have plenty to say about this, but Debbie Downer on the way, but maybe somebody else wants to say something first.
I started the lifestyle identified as Kajara, which is, it translates to slave. I found that total power exchange relationships were absolutely not good for me in my growing up and trauma and lots of counseling. It's not good for me, so I choose not to engage in those. So I don't have to grapple with that in the same way I did have to grapple with having chose it. As a white woman who was serving a white man, it was pretty gross negligence on my part. For me, I'm not saying everyone, but for me, when I look back, I see the gross negligence of understanding.
Okay. Did you want to say something now, Bennett?
Sure.
You can be Debbie Downer. It's okay. It's okay.
Bring it on, Debbie.
I actually don't. I don't reconcile either. I don't have to. I don't have to accept it, approve of it, internalize it, excuse it. I think there's really no excuse, and this is my opinion, but listen to the whole thing. I don't think there's any excuse for these terms continuing to be allowed to exist to such a prominent degree in kink, particularly in the US, right? They're just, as Rio has said, and Angel said, there's other ways to designate this type of power play, and that don't use these deadly terms, you know, because in my opinion, until white people learn how to control themselves and divest from the supremacy, unearned wealth, unchecked privilege, they shouldn't be allowed to use those terms. They cannot have nice things. But with that said, one of my Black lovers identifies as a slave. And when she and I started seeing each other, she was in service to a white woman. And for some reason, I had like absolutely no problem with that. And part of that was because she was in full possession of her power and her personhood and her agency. And as far as I know, the dominant who she was serving showed the kind of care and attention to this dynamic of a white person being the master to a Black slave that I would expect from a white person automatically. So I've never been squicked by that, you know, because she's just beautiful and in possession of it. But I just want to be clear that to me, this is about white people who have abused their power for centuries. This is not about Black people who want to serve, and this is a personal choice for people in that dynamic, particularly, in my opinion, for Black people. There are plenty of Black people who identify as slaves, and in some way I'm a little envious of their freedom because I don't feel, you know, it doesn't call to me, and, you know, that complete surrender sounds very intoxicating, right? So I'm on the side of, you know, I'm on our side about that. And finally, as Skin from the band Skunk Anansi, she likes to sing, you know, yes, it's fucking political. Everything's political. So, but yeah, that's my diatribe. End of rant.
Thank you. No, it's really important to hear that whole, you know, this is something that the master slave community, the MS community struggles with and continually talks about, and you know, hearing what you have to say is really, really important to that conversation. And so thank you. And as the rest of you can see, we are not all of one mind about anything except consent, probably. And so, you know, take this and think about it. It's good food for thought. So thank you. I'm still waiting for any questions to show up in the chat. If not, I'll continue on and ask some questions. So do you do like role playing? Do you in your play? I mean, personally, interested in anything that folks do here? Like,
I'll bring it back up and say, I'm terrible at role playing. Oh, I just can't stay in it. You know, I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing? So no, I could if I had to.
okay. Others? Tyler, Manny, Angel. Okay. What? And Manny, and then Tyler. Go ahead, Manny.
I have a thing for daddies, and typically my type when I date or have sex with men is the daddy type. So my last partner very much, you know, manifests that. So I do get into like daddy's fun role play and like to call them daddy.
What is that? What is daddy play to you? When you say they're a daddy, what does that mean?
It's kind of relinquishing power. And I think that fundamentally, and I speak for myself and perhaps a few other friends of mine who identify as gay men, who I think it's rooted in quintessential daddy issues. But for me, it's finding affection and ceding power to someone who I view in a daddy or in a paternal way and sexualize it. And so that again is deeply, for many can be deeply rooted, but for myself is highly erotic. And so it's something that is even outside of BDSM, a lot of gay identifying men speak about or exoticize the notion of a daddy. And I mean, I think that's true across genders as well. I know that, you know, identifying, you know, individuals also refer to some of their non-male identifying partners as daddy. But yes, for me, I do have I even flag Hunter. Kelly Green or Hunter Green on one side too.
We talked about flagging in my presentation before. So Hunter Green is looking for a daddy, right?
Depending on what side. On your left, you're a daddy. On your right, you're a boy looking for a daddy.
Great. Tyler, you were going to say something?
Yeah, with role play. Now, for me, SM is what I do in the dungeon, and it's very erotic and sexual. But as far as role play, for me, I like to engage in puppy play. But puppy play for me is not SM. So it's not about pain. It's not about impact. It's sort of a dynamic, but honestly, you know, if you've got a wandering puppy like me, I kind of might get into some mischief. So am I really at bottom, or am I kind of topping my handler because I'm taking advantage of his shoe or something, right? But there is a role. I'm puppy, they are handler, and so that's a dynamic, you know, an energy exchange between us that we have, and that's role play in a sense for me.
Okay.
Well,
Any
I can
others?
speak to a really fun scene that I got to do, not this July, but the past July, where we did a full role play. In fact, the top played Widow and dressed up with the full-on X-Men hair, everything to the nines. And I was the bottom in the scene, and I had really researched it because it was something the top liked, was this particular character. And so I created a whole backstory and a whole current issue that was happening. And the superhero shows up at the dungeon and, you know, gets me and ties me up, and we play. And there's this code word. And not only is the code word like what the superhero needs to complete their mission, but also my safe word. So it was really exciting, very fun. I know a lot of people enjoyed watching it, and it was extraordinary to be a part of. So it can be full on like a role.
So was it the playfulness of it, or the getting out of yourself of it that, I mean,
Oh my
what was
God.
it about it that was, besides the actual, you know, physical interactions, what made it so fun?
So there was some elements here, right? So doing research on a Marvel character when I'm not that kind of geek, in service to this top person, and writing and developing this scenario, was a service that I could do that revved up the top for a few days before the scene actually even happened. Um, you know, so there's this excitement and titillation, and I don't know so much that I was a separate character. I kind of was just, you know, I had made a character to be, but it was really just me if I had cool powers to be a bad guy. So for me, it was just kind of like, what if I was, you know, a bad guy submissive? How could this happen, right? And so we had talked about parameters, and we had played outside of that as well. So it was just a blast, like to see how much it was embraced with the full costuming, and like really got into the things that I wrote, didn't just read them, but like studied them. So being appreciated, being loved and seen and valued for those skills and talents that don't typically have anything to do with BDSM
That's cool.
was really amazing for me in that.
Great. And anyone else? Because I have another question in the chat, unless we have.
I didn't participate in this, but some of these kind of role play scenes that involve a few people have a certain theatrical quality to them. So if they're done in a dungeon, you tend to get an audience. And one of the most fun role play scenes I ever saw was kind of a reenactment of Snidely Whiplash and tying little Nell to the railroad tracks. So they did the bondage and was doing all these things to her. And then, you know, the hero comes in at some point, Dudley Do-Right, and the Snidely Whiplash person had a big fake mustache on, and it was hilarious because it was playing on that story, and that was part of the joy of it, and it was actually as much the enjoyment as the specific BDSM that they were doing.
Oh my
It's
God,
pretty fun.
It sounds like so much fun. Okay,
Yeah.
I did think of one role play. Okay, I did think of one. So one of my old friends, she God rest her soul, she likes girly girls. So whenever she would come down to visit and we would play together, I would dress up as a girl. I'd put on the heels, and she's the one I would beat with the sequin purse. I just like, and she has it was so much fun. And she has a thing about her hair, and so sometimes it would turn into sort of like this, it's sort of like a hair interrogation scene where we would like threaten to wet her hair or put cheap products in there. And one time I put a shower cap on her, and it broke her in the scene. She broke the scene. She came completely out of headspace. I had to take the shower cap off. It was a step too far. But usually I like, yeah, dress as a girl and play really girly, and you know, It's kind
I
of
can't even imagine such a thing. I've known Bennett a while. I don't think I've ever seen Bennett girly. That's pretty funny. We have a question from the class. It says, why is there such a social stigma about BDSM? What do you think? Anyone want to take a shot at that?
Well, the classic reason is that BDSM is seen as abuse. I mean, here we're getting together and somebody gets hit. And, you know, just off, it was taking that very, very surface view. Any BDSM stuff, especially that involves pain, is seen as abusive. And the person who's the bottom or the submissive or the slave is somebody who's been browbeaten into submission, or somebody with no self-worth who just kind of grovels for whatever they can get, which kind of puts the top in the position of being the Snidely Whiplash, evil, manipulative, you know, abusive person. And I think when it was much more underground and not talked about and admitted in polite society, it was easier for that image to hang on. But I think the more we've talked about it and the more we've been open about it, that attitudes have changed more, and that a lot of the things that regular people do, a lot of things are really power involved. If you push somebody up against the wall and give them a really forceful kiss, that's a power move. That's a power exchange. And that is maybe the first step towards a more overt BDSM thing. But, you know, there's not a fine line between, you know, the pure vanilla whites are over here and the evil, dark leather, horrible BDSM people are over there. That there's kind of, you know, there's some of this in all of us.
I would also add that it is historically been seen as something that is a mental defect. It was not until the DSM-5 that it was removed. And so being seen as immoral and, you know, having a whole group of doctors put it in a book that what we do is somehow makes us mentally unstable or askew, did not help things.
Okay. Oh, I think we lost
We're
Angel
basically
again.
non-traditional, right?
Yeah.
So American society, right? You're supposed to have one man, one woman get together, have a house with a white picket fence, that there's a certain tradition that needs to be upheld and continued. And we're bucking tradition. We're engaging in activities that are just so out in left field in comparison to what the traditions have been set in America.
Yeah.
We
So-
cannot be controlled.
I'm sorry. So we cannot be controlled. Is that what you just said, Bennett?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. So yeah, it's non-traditional. It's seen as consent violating or abusive, which it isn't. What else? Anything else?
Now, with that said, there are some bad players that you run across. Just like in any demographic, there are some people who will give, there are people who will give anything a bad name. But I think that, I think folks who actually, and I would say you don't even have to really explore kink, but if you explore the community, you'll find that we're just people, you know, consenting and talking and negotiating and having a good time. But, you know, there are people who will give it a bad name. So, you know, yeah.
Who can violate consent, for example. And even though that's sort of one of the consent is sort of the bottom line, right? And behind all this. So I have a question. Some of you have identified
one other thing.
Yeah.
For that reason, for what Bennett just said, there's a lot of kind of self-policing within the community. And if you get a bad reputation for how you treat people, you'll be ostracized, and other people won't play with you because of that, because we have to kind of take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So actually, I have a couple of little questions. Like, Angel Marie, can you talk about what you meant by a collared girl?
Oh, so we have made a commitment to each other that is a long-term, lifelong commitment, and we acknowledge that with each other, and our public display of that, much like a wedding ring might be a public display of that, for others is a particular necklace set called a collar, and for us, it's an outward symbol to each other of who and how that dynamic works with she and I, and it's just like a proud way of saying I found my person.
Rio's showing off her collar. I noticed she just pulled it out of her shirt. If she has one. Mhm.
And it was not lightly. We had been seeing each other for almost 5 years before I made that choice.
Rio, you were saying something, you broke up?
Yeah, just that I do not take off this collar. I've had it on for a number of years, and it always stays with me, and it is one of the symbols of our relationship. If I ever took it off, it would be like saying I wanted to end the relationship. So it's got a pretty serious meaning for us, and it's not something I take lightly.
Okay. So I was going to change the subject a little bit. So some of you have identified as gay or lesbian, some have not. I mean, they haven't identified that. So do you restrict, if you identify as heterosexual or homosexual or whatever, does your play follow those lines too? In other words, if you're a gay man, do you only play with gay men, or how does that work? So, Manny, you're shaking your head. Why don't you say something?
I will start to effusively say that for me, that is not the case. I do play with men, and sometimes I will go into a scene with a sexual expectation that's negotiated, and sometimes I won't. But some of the best scenes I've had have actually been with women, actually, who are just amazing players. And my first experience was actually with a woman who was an amazing flogger, and I go into that not being attracted to them, but rather going for the release. And that's special to me as well. And that's where I kind of bifurcate sex with the release of endorphins. And so that's also special to me. So that does not apply to me at all.
Okay, so you consider yourself gay though?
I am gay, yes.
Okay, but you'll play across gender lines.
And as someone wise once told me, for a great scene, do not look at the gender, look at the player.
Okay, other people have an opinion on this?
Yep. So
Yeah.
my status as being transgender, is something that someone might think about. But yes, I'm transgender, but I identify as male. And I actually, sexually orientation wise, I am gay. So if I had penetrative sex, it would be with men. I do not have any desire, nor have I with women. But if the connection is right, I'm going for that endorphin high, whether my top is female or male or genderqueer doesn't make a difference to me.
Okay. Bennett, you're nodding.
Yeah. I mostly play with women. But one of the, I guess, greatest honors, except, I don't know, it's all a great honor, that I had was I had a straight male top asked me to top him. I mean, we're talking somebody who was just like, and I was just like, really? And we had a hilarious scene. And I had to figure out how to top him without stripping him of, he didn't want to be emasculated, he didn't want to necessarily be, he kind of wanted to be broken a little bit, but not emasculated. And I was happy to not have to do that. But that was pretty specific, although, yeah, energetically, I'm mostly oriented toward women, but if there is a man who has got, and I know this is very binary language, sorry about that, but if there's a man who's got, good energy, I can think of one man that I would allow to top me, which I haven't, but yeah, mostly women, but occasionally a dude, but not really.
Other people, Angel, you have a comment?
Yeah, I can. Besides Bennett, you should let me know who that is. We can make that happen for you. Um, for me, people ask me my sexuality, and I like to say evolving, but really it's omni. I don't really care much about the body other than how the energy flows with me. So I have a lot of experience with different gender identifications, including like I don't identify with a gender and I'm agendered or non-gendered. And by a lot of experience, I mean I have played with these people, not had romantic relationships necessarily, but regular play partners. So I think that I can speak for me and just say that for me, it's about the energy exchange and what we negotiate with each other. And I treat my, what other people have been calling genital sex, exactly like I treat my play. I negotiated out. This is expectations and lines.
Okay. You're the only one who hasn't answered. Did you want to answer that? You don't have to, but.
I think everybody else has covered it.
Okay. Okay, good. I haven't got any other questions from the chat. Robert, did you have any questions? You've been sort of hanging out there. I wanted to make sure.
No, you guys are. I'm just over here soaking up this game and this information. I'm happy. Like
Okay.
you're just getting fed. So I'm just letting it run.
Okay, cool. Cool. Well, I have a few more. We'll do a few more. And I know we're past the hour, so we'll just go a little bit longer. And because I think there's more to say. So is there anything that for the panelists, is there anything that scares you about BDSM?
Absolutely. I could lose my job, my house, my car, my existence by participating in this. I'm in a state and in a job where there's a moralities clause. And it would not be the first time that a teacher, I know a few in the scene that have lost their jobs. So what scares me is other people's fear and their small-mindedness. But I find that the older I get and the more solid I get in my career, the less I care.
Okay. Others, do you have things that scare you about BDSM, the scene, any of it?
There's nothing about BDSM per se as a larger, topic that scares me. And I've been very lucky to work in the book business, which tends to be much more accommodating of all kinds of lifestyles, if you want, that over time, I've usually come out to at least some of the people I work with. The only thing that in retrospect I found scary was I can be, as a bottom, so excited and turned on and desirous of something that I want it to be heavier than is really safe for me. And in that case, it is trusting the top that I play with, that they know where the safe boundaries are. If I have enough endorphins running that I'm just going more, even when more would not be good for me. And that's where, knowing the top and the people you play with helps. Because the couple of times I've done it, the top is, of course, not. And later I've said to myself that I could have really been hurt. The one instance I can think of was in knife play, which psychologically I find very, very powerful. And I wanted to be cut. And,
so what do you mean by knife play? And doesn't that involve cutting?
No, there's a difference between knife play and cutting. Those two mean very different things. A lot of knife play is psychological. You pull out this 8-inch Bowie knife and lay it against someone's cheek and say, do you realize what I could do with this? And any person worth their salt's going, oh my God. So it's a lot about, kind of a mind fuck. There are also things you can do with a knife. My top has done this, which is really painful, but in a very small, precise way, is touching someone in tender places with the point of a knife. They're not penetrating at all, but just touching. And with a very sharp knife, it can be physically very intense feelings and very painful. But in knife play, I have never seen anybody cut inadvertently in a knife play scene. If somebody really wants to have a cutting, it's called cutting. You don't use a regular knife. You would use a surgical instrument. There's sterility involved. There's a lot more preparation and a lot more negotiation than in knife play. But I know in this one particular scene, I was enjoying it so much, I asked to be cut. I wanted to be cut. And that was not a safe thing for me to have done. And I was just high enough on what was going on that I had lost track of that. And luckily I was playing with a very responsible top she didn't say this to me, but her reaction, I'm sure internally, was something like, not on your life. So I don't know if I've gone off the deep end on this answer. But that's the only thing that in retrospect scared me, that my desires could be strong enough that I could want something that would physically harm me. And that's where the trust comes in.
Okay, any others who have something about the scene or play that would scare you? No? We're fearless, aren't we?
Fearless, but we trust in consent, right? So
right.
We trust that in the consent, like I've given explicit consent for these things. And then that's what's within the realm of happening. That's why she didn't get cut, because that wasn't negotiated, and you're not in a place where you can consent once you've started playing. Especially
that's a really interesting point. That's great. You want to say any more about that?
Well, sure. Like as she spoke about, her endorphins were running, her thought process is altered. It is very much an altered state, be it, we don't use alcohol or drugs, but it's an altered state. And those of us that have experienced it can certainly say it's completely altering. So if you're altered, you can't consent. And consent is the groundstone of what we do. That's why their negotiation is so important. The negotiation is all of the consent up front that I want to give, or that we're going to have between us for the scene. And as the bottom, it's what I give. And as a top, it's what I am willing to receive. And those things can vary drastically. But I think that's the consent line. For me, like if you're already inebriated, you can't even have a negotiation because you're not in a state to consent to anything. And I know people that play outside of that, and that's them. For me, and most of the people that I engage with, consent is sacred place.
Okay, thanks. I have a question specifically for Bennett. At one point you said you identify as a boy. Sometimes. Can you say what that means?
Yeah, I've tried being butch, like very butch, and I don't have all the spoons for that. And femme, oh God, I can only do femme for maybe like a couple hours at a time, and I have to like practice and and get my and it's exaggerated femininity and it's ridiculous, but it's really cute, and you have to pay all the attention to me if I dress up as a girl. Even if I just put on a dress and heels and no makeup, you've got to pay all anyway. So but boy, to me, boy feels like a good flexibility, because a good, just like a good medium point for me, like, because I don't have to, I don't feel pressured to really lean toward one side or the other. Now politically, I caucus with the butches. So if we need more butches in a situation, then that's where I'm going to go. But and I also really enjoy butches. Like, that's who I'm attracted to, is butches and boys. But yeah, I don't know. Boy for me provides a big flexible range that also includes butch and femme. And also, you know, I kind of feel like a teenage boy, and for some reason, people who know me, they seem to think the same thing, and I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Okay. Manny, you talked about that daddy boy thing. What does boy mean to you in that sense? You're muted. Yeah, Manny, you're muted. You need to unmute.
Sorry about that.
That's
For
okay.
me, it's strictly role play. I don't identify as a boy in quotation marks, but for me, it's strictly role play. It's about ceding power
Okay.
to someone who exudes a parental figure in a play scene or in a sexual scene.
Okay, so for you, it's a role play.
It's role play for me, yes.
Okay, now Tyler, what about you?
Boy for me is all about the headspace, the heart, and where I'm feeling I fit in. I'm energetic. I'm always wanting to learn. I'm curious about things. I like to play as a bottom. I'm not necessarily submissive like a slave would be, so I don't identify that realm. But as a boy, it's a service role that I can help someone. I can assist with a situation or assist people with what they're doing. And I held a title, which was the American Leather Boy, which supposedly there was no hierarchy because you have the leather man, the leather woman, and the leather boy. So was I submissive to them? No, not actually, because we all were serving our community. And the energy exuded by me is that of being an energetic, inquisitive individual. You know, not that I couldn't take on, you know, being the alpha boy, right? So I may have some like junior boys to me, or if there's a puppy event and there's always the lack of handlers, it's like, well, then I could take on the role as a good boy and handle some of the puppies instead of going into the puppy role.
Tyler, I actually have a question for you. Is there any place that the animal play or the role play does intersect with BDSM, or is it much more an emotional and social role playing thing?
It can. For me, everything is integrated. So I identify as a leather man because I'm leather and I'm kinky. But boy and puppy also play into things where, let's see, if I get happy over a situation, I might wiggle my butt. So that's kind of the puppy thing that sort of kicks in. When I'm playing intensely with an impact scene, I actually bark like a dog. And if it gets super intensive, then I howl. Although that's really not pup mode, that's just that kind of internal animal part of me that comes out in an SM scene. So it's really integrated for me.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts on that from anybody?
I just love the thought of like the head boy with a bunch of boys running around boying. Just I get this great image of you like directing the other boys, and it makes me just want to like collect them all and gnaw on them or something. So yeah,
Peter Pan thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to respect the fact that time-wise, and so I wanted to kind of open it first of all to see if there are any other questions from the class. Give a pause to that. Please put them in the chat. I'll promise I'll read them and read them out. Also, I'm interested in sort of if there's one thing, and this wasn't on a prepared questions panelist, so you just have to, you know, live with it. I'm topping the panel right now, so you know, live with it. So
Or choose not to consent, drop off the call.
yeah, there's no consent here. No, just kidding. You consented to be here. So what I want is for you to, if you could sort of sum up why you do BDSM? What is it about it that keeps you? I mean, some of you have talked about being in the scene for years, most of you, years and years and years. What keeps you there? What is it that's so enticing or intriguing about it that makes it, that keeps you there? Who wants to go first? No one's going to volunteer. Everybody look away. I'll pick one of you unless somebody volunteers. Okay, Angel, tell me about that. Tell me about what keeps you in
Wow.
the scene.
Try and define words for what that is. What I do know is that I took a year off, it- and didn't engage in anything for a year. Part of it was to concentrate on my children and their needs at that time, but it left this gaping hole inside of me, and I had this aching and this sadness, and my actual life quality decreased quite a bit, and I found that I had to come back. So for me, that once I came back, I was that hole was filled, and I felt this is my community. This is where I belong. These people are like me. This is where I find love, acceptance, challenge, and growth. So naming what it is, I'm not sure how to do that. I just know that it fills that part of me. And yes, it started as sexual exploration and that, but it has come to mean this greater thing to me, and it's more than what I do, it's who I am.
Well, that was very eloquent. You didn't have to worry about not having the words. Manny, you were nodding. Does that resonate with you?
It really does. I grew up in a very traditional Catholic household where everything was taboo, even impure thoughts. And so even the notion of even self-gratification was considered a sin. So for me, to find one release in something that could or cannot be sexual was fantastic. To find a different outlet for that, so not even going into a scene and looking for an orgasm, was really powerful to me, and a different kind of release. But also to be in a space that is safe, with community, with people who I trust or I've gotten to know, and who I reach an agreement with, is really powerful to me. And it's fortified also the people in my life, my friendships, my chosen family. So it's really multidimensional for me, and that's really powerful to me as a community member.
Thank you. That's quite that. I'm hearing community as a common theme. That's interesting. Rio, how about you? What keeps you coming back?
Well, the beyond kind of the obvious that I get more sexual pleasure from BDSM sex than I do with regular. And I mean, sometimes I don't even refer to it as pain. It's more the intensity of the experience is really ramped up. And that can be really painful, but it's the intensity that is so powerful for me. So I have a very intense relationship because of that. People have mentioned community. When I first kind of got into the scene, it was kind of more like, "Ooh, I bought a new flogger. Do you want to flog me, or shall I flog you?" And as I got more involved, I found that there's more of a history, there's more of a culture, and there definitely is a community. And it's fabulous. I mean, there are people who'll support me. I can go to anywhere in the country, and if you know the right people and places to go, there's a BDSM, a leather community that I can get support from and that I can drop in on. And that community has very positive values that I really identify with. To really do consent, you have to know yourself, which I didn't know that much when I first got into the scene. And it really challenged me to identify who I am and what's important to me. And things like trust and honesty and integrity, they sound like, I don't know, just kind of words, but they really are things that I think many of us in community really live by, because you can't do something like this unless you can talk with people about it, and unless you share certain values. And I love that. And to me, that makes my community especially valuable to me.
Okay, thanks. Tyler, what keeps you coming back?
Yes, community, that's a big part of it. For me, I'm a multifaceted person. So I work in healthcare, so I have to be very professional and on point. And expression of who I am really isn't part of the job. I need to communicate with people, but I need to get the work done. Music is another outlet for me, and that for me, because my personality is actually fairly introverted and stoic, and it's not very emotional. Um, I have thrown a temper tantrum maybe twice in my life. That's just not something that I do. I'm pretty even keel. So music to one degree allows me to express emotions, whatever the piece may be. If it's a sad time for a requiem, if it's happiness and celebration, whatnot. But BDSM has actually added another facet to my life, which has allowed me to express other deep-rooted sexual type of emotions and deep feelings in that regard. And that's another aspect of me as a person, because growing up in a Christian Protestant family and thinking that, okay, well, this is the way things go, it was very limited in thought. Chinese family, we don't talk about sex. It's very taboo. It's like I would be shown, okay, well, there's the Time Life books, go read about the biology of things. But we never had the birds and bees talk, that just wasn't something that was done, because outside of marriage, sex was not a thing. For the longest time, I thought sex was only something that they do on TV. That's not a real life thing, because I was just such in that narrow box of things. So I've been able to explore and find out and have conversations with people from across the nation as well as around the world, and found out, there's so much more in life and so much more variety and expanses that I had never dreamt of were even possible had I not gotten involved in BDSM and met these other people from other areas and shared our experiences, learn and listen to what their stories are, and then I get to tell them what mine are.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. And last but certainly not least, Bennett.
Thank you. Yeah.
What keeps you coming back?
Absolutely what everybody else says. And yeah, it's big, sexy, adult fun. You can make a freaking Snidely Whiplash scene into reality and have it be fun and safe and everything. It's spiritual. When I was getting high on lots of drugs and lots of alcohol, and that was taken away, it's not like I wanted to get high, but I enjoyed the sensation. And kink is a very safe, physically safe thing for me to do, to experience lots of sensation. And also the consent piece. I am required to have a voice. It is not optional. There's so many places in life where people don't want to hear from me. A black dyke, a little old black dyke, except for now. Now black is the new black again, so we're popular once again. But I mean, there's so many places in life where, like, the white male patriarchy does not want to hear from anybody except itself. And in kink, no matter where we're at in the strata, my voice is required. It's not optional. So I have to speak up. And I would say, that I'm just gonna, if anybody wants to play without consenting, without negotiating consenting, I wouldn't do it. I'm not just gonna. But yeah, so I get to live like a bigger, more fun self. And I'm a Sagittarius, so we just like fun all day long. Ooh, it's just so much fun. Oh, okay, I'm gonna stop. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you. That was kind of our closing, and I just wanted to say in closing that you all are just amazing. That I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this and for being so open and sharing so much of yourselves, and putting up with me asking questions that we hadn't talked about in advance. So thank you. Robert, did you have anything you wanted to say?
I don't. I keep, putting up my little clapping hands emoji, because I'm just so thankful that you all came on. I've never had anything like this in any of my human sexuality classes. So this is amazing, and with everyone's permission, I'll share this to some of my classmates, some of my students that weren't able to get on the call, because some of my students have class during this time and some work, and so this has just been great. I'm so appreciative, folks. Thank you.
Well, and I want to
I
thank you. Go ahead.
I'm
You want to say
sorry.
something?
I just
Go
wanted
ahead.
to offer that if those students that hear this later have questions for us, I'm personally happy to answer those afterwards. So if they want to email them or send them my way, I'm more than happy to do that.
And you can do that through me. I can farm out questions to any of the panelists, Robert. So if you do get them, and we're saying that to the class who will see it later, contact Robert and he can get questions to me, to the panelists through me.
Yes.
Thank you, Angel, for saying that. So
All right. Well,
I think we have done what we came to do.
Thank you all again.
All right. All right. So we'll say good night. Thank you.
Everybody have
Bye.
a good night. Take
Bye.
care.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Be
Marilyn,
safe.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.